BYU takes down UCF 41-21 here at LaVell Edwards Stadium in Provo, Utah. The Cougars close out the regular season with an 11-1 record. First 11-win regular season since 2001. Mitch Harper, Kyle Ireland, host of Cougar Sports Saturday on KSL NewsRadio every Saturday, noon to 3 on the legacy home of the Cougars. You can also catch me, of course, here on Cougar Tracks every day on KSL NewsRadio. Again, 41-21, the Cougs get it done over UCF. Weird day today, I thought, Kyle. Senior day, which always heavy in emotions, but it was strange how going into this game, it was a case of how do you feel about this game knowing that the Big 12 championship berth was already secured after the loss by Arizona State to Arizona. So there wasn't much on the line, maybe at-large playoff outlook, but I'm not too optimistic about the at-large opportunities for BYU. Just your thoughts on this game and how it played out as the Cougs get a 41-21 win.
Yeah, it was weird, I think, in another way because it was an 11 a.m. kick. And these morning games, I'm just not used to them. I'm so used to LaVell Edwards Stadium night games at this point that just the day game kind of throws me off a little bit. But BYU, slow start in all three phases. They ended up falling down into a 14-0 hole before they ended up putting up 31 straight points against UCF. BYU is clearly the better team in this game, and I think if I was looking at the scoreboard, just looking at the score itself, I'm surprised that BYU didn't score 50-plus on this team because of the way things were going from the second and third quarter on. But I just thought that, for the most part, BYU played what they should have played against this UCF team, the way that they played. I thought that they played well for the seniors. Bear Bachmeier had an outstanding performance as far as efficiency was concerned. LJ Martin, first 3-touchdown performance of his BYU career, and then Parker Kingston, yards after the catch, and then also special on special teams.
LJ Martin, you bring him up. 22 carries, 95 yards, and those 3 touchdowns, as you noted. What's also of note from this game for LJ, possibly his last home game as a BYU Cougar. He was one of 4 underclassmen who were part of the senior day festivities, which kind of a bummer. You know, to me, and I say that because I think the senior day should be for the seniors, the ones that stuck it out through their entire eligibility. Now, LJ, if he goes to the NFL, absolutely do it. I think it's no shame because BYU fans love cheering on a former Coug in the NFL. There's no shame. But I just think, senior days for the seniors. To me, I just think that's kind of the approach I would take with it. I also understand you want to, send off a great player, and LJ is a great player, and who's to say that he doesn't run it back? He could. We've seen many BYU players over the last 5 years where this has become a common theme where senior day is filled with seniors, and then this group of guys where maybe they're going to have a decision because of COVID. But, I think it's fine. To me, it's like it's senior day. Just leave it for the seniors, and then you guys make your decision. I don't know. That's maybe it's just the old school side of me. Maybe it's that boomer energy from me, I guess, having a little bit
traditional college football.
Traditional college football, but Glasgow, Keanu Tanavasa, LJ Martin, outstanding football players, and then Sam Vanderhaar as well in there. But Glasgow, Tanavasa, Martin, NFL guys. And Tanavasa told me back in January in an interview that he looked at this year being his last. That was his kind of mindset coming into the year. So it doesn't shock me that Keanu had the locker room decorated over at the student-athlete building. That was all decorated by his wife and family. That didn't shock me, and nor did Glasgow either. LJ, it doesn't surprise me because he's just playing so well. He's so dang good. We've talked so much about him this season. We've been on the LJ train from the get-go. From that Portland State game, I think we said comfortably, this is the best running back in the Big 12, and he's backed it up and then some. He's been outstanding for BYU, but, we'll see what happens. LJ could be the type, though, that runs it back maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens there, but he was excellent today. 3 touchdowns, as you noted. Bear Bachmeier was excellent, too. 21 of 25 passing the football, 289 yards, 1 touchdown, and a number that Cougar fans can appreciate, 84. That's the completion rate for Bear Bachmeier. Outstanding. You'll take that against anyone. You go up against any power conference team and you're completing 84% of your passes. That's a really good day at the office.
Yeah, he was efficient, but he was smart with his decision making. He also had some excellent throws in this game. I thought he had 2 really nice throws to each side of the sidelines to JoJo Phillips, where one JoJo made a spectacular catch on. But I also thought that he was excellent with, some zip on the ball. He had one that went right through a UCF defender's hands that when he initially threw it, I was like, oh no, it's going to get intercepted, but it didn't. And Bears just
are you talking about the one that was like right through the defender's hands, number 2?
Right on the verge of the red zone.
Yeah, that was crazy. The replays, we're watching it both here in the stadium and then the TV replays in the press box. How did that player not come up with that pick? It
was right through his hands.
And I think that number 2 was also seen at times wearing a BYU towel in the game, which had some UCF fans going on social media. What the heck, man?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen that where a player's been sporting the other team's logo during the game. That would catch me off guard every time.
I think it happened. I want to say there was one other time here at a BYU game that someone did.
It wasn't the rivalry game, was it?
No, definitely not the rivalry game. That would be headline news that we would have in rivalry lore for years.
Blasphemy right there.
But no, I think. But continue though. What were you saying though?
Yeah, no, I just thought the Bear played really well today. I thought that he was smart with his decision making, which I think that just kind of goes back to the theme of the year with him for the most part. I mean, I think he's still only 4 interceptions this year, if I'm not mistaken, and so just to be able to continue to make good decisions, he's going to have to do that. As I know, we're going to look ahead a little bit to next week and against Texas Tech again, but that was his worst game of the season. Bear needs to play better than he did against them the first time, but he's made some nice steps in his game, I feel, since that day in Lubbock over these last few games, the last month of the season.
Parker Kingston was excellent today. He was Bears' top target. 6 catches, 126 yards, 1 touchdown, 8 targets. Also a punt return for a touchdown, 55 yards. Took it to the house. His 3rd career punt return for a TD, first this season. Parker, there's an argument to be made. He's the best punt return man in the 21st century. I was thinking about it in the press box today. You got Vaisa Kahema. You got James Dye. I think 2 of the all-timers in BYU history. You could even throw in maybe a Mike Regel, a Jaron Dabney. There's been some good punt returners in BYU history. Even Nate Mickle, I remember he had one against Wyoming in 2006. But to me, Parker Kingston is a combination of speed and production. To get any touchdown in the punt return game, that is so hard these days. It is just difficult to produce touchdowns in the return game. He's got 3 in 2 years. So he reminded everyone, and look, it's been up and down this year for Parker. Fumbles, the Texas Tech game, which, again, we'll talk a little bit more about coming up, the rematch. In Lubbock, he had that muffed punt, and he fumbled that thing, and that was a terrible tone setter for BYU. But then on the flip side, you see the brilliant moments from Parker, and when he's on, man, he is electric. He's dynamite in this offense and special teams. And what's interesting, too, is I thought back seeing his production, 126 yards, had a long of 46, Yak, 68 yards. Aaron Roderick said in a comment back in May on the KSL Sports Zone that he said, Parker Kingston will be an every down player for us finally in this offense. So the confidence has been there. And I think sometimes, too, maybe for players, just having that belief from the coaches, that naturally lends itself to higher level of production and results. And coming into this week, fast forward, Chase is out, and you saw in the pregame that Chase told some fans, I'll be back next week. He'll be ready to roll, and Kalani said as much in the postgame, so he'll be good to go for Arlington. But A-Rod said, Parker's number 1, JoJo right there, they're going to carry the workload. So, and they had a lot of confidence in them, and I thought Parker did a really nice job.
Yeah, I think that Parker, the thing about him is everybody knows that he's fast, right? He's got the track speed in him. I just think that he's been a lot crisper as the season's gotten on with his route running. He's been spectacular at times, but also that special teams play. I mean, the speed helps in those returns, but that punt return, he put his foot in the ground and then cut back and then went right up the middle of that return. If he doesn't have the ability to foresee that and put his foot in the ground and make that cut back inward, he doesn't find the end zone there. He's tackled along the sideline, the near sideline there. So it was just impressive to see, his vision, his route running, all of the things in his game are kind of coming together as he's getting, more mature in the system.
Second quarter defense had a big play. They were down 14-0 in this game. Slow start. I kind of attribute it to similar to last year against Houston, where they knew their fate. Last year was on the negative side. Oh, we're not in the Big 12 championship game. All is lost. We're going to let Houston hang around with us, and they're only a 4-win team. And I'm thinking to myself, guys, people, after years go by, they don't remember how you got to 10 or 11 wins. They just say, you had an 11-2 season in 2024. It's like, win a game. You want to say a game's not big, I always say lose it, and then let's find out if it's not a big game. When people were saying the Independence Bowl, oh, it's not a big game, who cares, BYU got hosed. They lost it, big game. So the Houston game last year, I bring that up because the Big 12 championship, I remember it was Kansas State lost to Iowa State. So then BYU got eliminated, and BYU in the second half comes out of the locker room, and they're just stumbling out of the gates, and it's like they're letting Houston hang around. I kind of got that same vibe today where it's like we already know we're in, playing comfortable. I just don't think there was that edge right out of the gates. The whole stadium didn't have an edge, I honestly thought, coming in. It wasn't a sellout today. Disappointing. I know Thanksgiving week, it's a tricky spot. Personally, I would love to see Thanksgiving week as championship weekend, not regular season college football. I would love to move up the calendar by a week in this sport, but I just don't think there was much energy, and I think that reflected on the players early on, and that's why they found themselves in a 14-0 hole early on.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me, if you go back a few weeks, with the basketball team where they played Delaware, came out slow in the first half, and then KY after the game was asked if they were looking ahead to UConn. He was like, maybe. And I felt like Kalani might have had a little bit of that maybe to his answer in the postgame where it was just like, he's not going to speak for everybody on the team, but like maybe they are just like, yeah, we knew that we're going to be playing in Arlington next week, and so they don't come out with the same juice. But the fan base, that was an interesting thing as well, Mitch, because especially where the rock sections are in the end zone there, in the south end zone especially, I noticed, especially at kickoff, that was like not filled in like it usually is. And, for the most part this season, this crowd has showed up in a spectacular fashion.
Yeah, this stadium, and we're not knocking Cougar fans.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
But the thing is like today, it wasn't.
It didn't have.
It wasn't
the energy of
experience.
It.
Yeah. The UCF beat writers that were here covering this, they did not get the full LES experience. And I think a little bit of the vibe for this game was just be healthy, get in, get out, and let's get on to Arlington. Let's play the big one coming up next week. But I just go point to every game is significant. Every time you touch the field, it's massive because, and I bring that up because we see in a sport now where coaches can be knocking on the doorstep of a number one ranking, and then 2 weeks later, in the case of a James Franklin, they get fired. And now they're at another program. And so this thing can change in a hurry. When you think, BYU is riding high, everything's flying high. If you would have lost this game, you're not feeling good. So it's like every game is huge. Yep. There's so much money involved. These players are getting tons of money. There's so much money to pay to go to these games. It's a big deal every time you step foot on the field, and I was just a little disappointed in that start. Evan Johnson got things rolling for BYU in the second quarter. He had a pick. He said that they kind of saw it coming. The play call, how did he describe it? Was UCF's play call?
It was the Philly.
Philly, that was right. Great memory there. Yeah. Dwayne Thomas Jr. for UCF. It was a trick play. He throws the ball. Evan reads it completely, picks it off. BYU's PA system then starts playing. Whoop, there it is. I'm like, why are we bringing this back? Like, whoop, there it is. I was like, all right, is it throwback day? Did I miss the memo here? But it was a whoop, there it is again for Shmev. They just got Shmev'd. It was a great moment for Evan Johnson. And I thought BYU after that point kind of got off to the races. LJ gets a touchdown and 2 of his 3, and then BYU was just rolling from there. They had some more takeaways too. Kind of a disappointing thing, but mixed results, I thought. Field goals, Will Farron, kind of mixed bag for him in this game. We can get to that, but also there was kind of a big swing of events too on one of those touchdowns for LJ.
Yeah, LJ, it was interesting to me, Mitch. I liked the play calls with him today, and the one that I think was the third touchdown, he had that the fake. He took the direct snap, and then he took a fake pitch to to Bear Bachmeier. We're seeing little wrinkles like that in the offense with him. And I think that the thing for me with LJ Martin is he's showing like his maturity, like I mentioned earlier, but like his knowledge of the offense. And that kind of like, it leads me to like think that maybe that was the last time we see him at LaVell Edwards Stadium, where he's played so much over the last 3 years. And granted, like he's missed games due to injury, but like just playing games and like being in the room and understanding Aaron Roderick so well and what he wants out of like Bear Bachmeier. This is only his first season in this offense. LJ Martin, like he knows Aaron Roderick's brain at this point, right? And what him and Harvey Unga want him to do. So just to be able to lean on that in this game was super special to see that. And if that is the last time Cougar fans see LJ Martin here on this field, like what a way to go out, you know?
Definitely. And you bring up that direct snap. I think the play before was the one I was alluding to where it was a rapid turn of events. Carson Ryan's trying to bully his way into the end zone on a reception and looks initially live that he got in.
Gotcha.
But then it looked like it was maybe a fumble, but then it got ruled as a forward progress. One play later, BYU punches it in with LJ Martin. That was a big swing there because if that ended up being a fumble, and Scott Frost was ticked, he was firing up the refs quite a bit, and rightfully so. I could understand the argument, but I do think it was right. But, that was a big swing there because then that tied it up at 14, and then BYU was off and running from there. Going to the special teams, Will Farron, he had some misses, but then also I thought his final field goal of the day, a 50-yarder, I thought that was big for Will to hit that 50-yarder. He's so big into the mental side of things that, he's never going to get down. I think that's one of the amazing attributes of Will Farron, one of 18 guys that's a senior that got honored today, and then the 4 underclassmen for a class of 22 guys this year in 2025. He never gets too low after a string of misses. He had 2 misses today, yet he boots a 50-yarder. I think that was an impressive moment for Will.
Yeah, it was nice to see him bounce back after missing those 2 in a row. But the thing with Will is he's missed field goals in 5 games now, Mitch. And it seemed like it was, a really strong start to the season, then had a really big lull. And then really, it feels like the last month or so, month and a half, he's been a lot better than that middle stretch. But today wasn't the performance that he's going to want. And BYU can't afford to have something like that happen where he's 50% on field goals in the Big 12 championship game or whatever they play in after that.
He's got to be automatic.
He's got to be automatic, and you've got to be able to trust a guy who's arguably, top 2, top 3 kicker in BYU program history, in my opinion.
He's up there.
And so just to be like, I appreciate Will's mindset. I talked to him earlier this week at practice, and just like his ability to go one kick at a time, like that's an impressive mindset. But he's got to get the job done when it's, especially those field goals where, he makes it from 50, but then he's missing it from, inside the 45. It's just, you got to be able to have those automatically.
I agree. And also, I thought something that's becoming more of an automatic thing for BYU every single week is sacks. Underrated for this BYU team. They had 2 today. And their season total, Kyle, 28. That's the second most in the Kalani Sitake era. The only behind 2016 where they had 29. So 28 sacks for, remember a couple years ago, what was it, 2022, last year of Tuiaki. Then even the first year under Jay Hill, BYU could not get home. And I know that Kelly Papinga and some of the coaches even downplayed the significance of sacks, but still, they're big momentum moments for the fan base, especially when you're at home. Tausili Akana gets one. Jack Kelly had one. I thought those were some great moments. I just like where BYU's pass rush is trending heading into the postseason. I think that's something to really be excited about. And just that, again, the fact that they're turning the corner of that no longer being a story like, they just can't get sacks. They just, no matter who they have, they can't get sacks. No, they do now. And Tausili Akana, I've been singing that guy's praises since spring ball.
Yeah.
He is going to be so good. And I love, too, that he's showing these signs now because I just feel like the momentum is going to build for 2026 and 2027. You've obviously got to retain him. He's putting out good film that would probably say to power conference teams, hey, let's go get that guy. He's looking like that 4-star recruit that he was projected to be out of Skyridge. But I think when you make one transfer already from a blue blood like Texas, and then you come to BYU, hey, there's a little bit of humility, and you realize, you know what, all the glitz and glamour of college football, maybe this is where I need to be around the family. Because he cited that a ton a couple weeks ago when I talked to him about being around family, and I just think that he feels comfortable in this environment, and he's thriving. He's taking off. I think Tausili is having an excellent game. And Jack Kelly, what can you say about him, a senior? Great commentary in the postgame, talking about how he wishes he could have been at BYU all 4 years. You love that kind of commentary because Jack probably never envisioned his life to be at BYU, yet he wishes he would have been here the whole time. And that's going to be the challenge for BYU in future years, is to make sure to get those local kids that want to play football, that are good high-level players, get them to BYU for all 4 years. But obviously he was a developmental guy, goes to Weber, and he's became an absolute stud. But Jack Kelly, quite the story these 2 years at BYU.
Yeah, I mean, he had an outstanding season as a whole and battled through injury to be able to put up the numbers that he did. I mean, he's been spectacular during his time at BYU. He's one of the best guys on this defense as far as his playmaking ability, his ability to get after the quarterback, those sacks that you talked about. I do want to mention with Tausili, though, it seemed like the second half of the season was really when he started to come on, and I feel like a lot of the quarterback pressure came with that kind of same time period. And
Arizona game.
I don't know if Tausili is the
Arizona
only
game.
reason for that, because I feel like Keanu Tanavasa's had his best.
Talmoipeu.
Yeah, there's just been a lot of these guys that have stepped up their games
Logan
in the
Latui.
second half of the year, and it's been nice to see because you have those veteran guys like Jack, Isaiah Glasker, Keanu, John Talmoipeu. Like, those guys are all, leaving or might leave, but then you also see the youth at the same time being able to rise up. And so just to be able to show the depth for the future and that transition from this year to next year, like, there's things to be excited about that, you may lose Glasker and Kelly or just Kelly, but you're going to have guys behind them that have shown that they have the ability to step up and make plays.
I liked some of the snaps late, too, from Kinilau Fonahema, Kendall Wall, two guys that I think are going to be huge at BYU in the future. Kendall Wall, I honestly thought coming into this year that if you looked at the true freshmen who could make an impact, he was one that I wrote about last January as being one of those guys. Obviously, veteran group, BYU would have had to have dug into its depth to turn to him. But the fact that he's getting opportunities, these are the next in line. And I almost wanted to ask Kalani about that because in postgame, but it was such a weird postgame how it was just all about Texas Tech this and Texas Tech that, which I understand, and we'll get to that here shortly. But I like the future personnel. And I look at BYU as a program right now, is that what's exciting about BYU getting to the Big 12 championship game, as the Cougars will face the Texas Tech Red Raiders next Saturday. Kyle and I will be in Arlington. We're going to have a special Friday preview show from Texas, I believe 7 to 9 p.m. We'll have more details on that coming up a little bit later in the week. But we'll be in Texas for that game. But I don't look at it as this is an end-of-the-road moment for BYU. Now, there's going to be a lot of seniors. Like, you look at that 22 guys that were honored today, a lot of key guys, including LJ and Jack Kelly, absolute studs, Tanner Wall. But I just think that BYU's pipeline is quietly building up. And I don't think people put enough stock anymore into the high school recruiting scene as much anymore. But there are some really talented players in the third and fourth strings. You get deep in the weeds and look at this roster, some really talented personnel that one day Kalani's going to get on a Monday presser and be like, you don't know him now, but you will. Like, you'll get to know him. Like, he'll just do that whole thing that he does. It's like, no, Kalani, like, I was talking about those guys on senior night last year. But I think that's what's exciting about the program, is they're leveling up and they're improving and their player development still. They're still sticking to their core of being a developmental program, but getting in the mix for some high-level recruits and still developing them. Because sometimes when you get high-level recruits, they don't want to be coached. They don't want to be developed. This coaching staff strikes a really good balance between Kalani, Jay Hill, Roderick, where you've got this nice blend of personalities, and it just works. And it's a really good spot right now for this program, and I think it's exciting. And then, again, you look at BYU and Texas Tech. It'll kick off at 10 a.m. on Saturday, December 6th. Rematch. We were there in Lubbock, and look, it was a beatdown. I thought BYU's defense showed up in Lubbock, but Your thoughts on this matchup, round 2 between the Cougs and the Red Raiders?
Yeah, before I go into specifics on Texas Tech, let me just comment on what you just said as far as like the program as a whole, because I think you have to look back to the fact that this is Kalani's 10th season leading this program. A guy who played for this team, he knows what it's like to wear that helmet, wear the stretch Y, and then the way things went in 2017, and then the changes that he was able to make with his staff over the next 3-4 years. How things have played out for BYU since that COVID season, Mitch, have been spectacular, remarkable, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're in the P4 structure now as a member of the Big 12 conference. But what Kalani's been able to do is nothing short of remarkable. And Evan Johnson in his postgame said that what has led to the success, especially the last 2 seasons in the Big 12, is that these players are buying in to the culture. And I know Kalani has his like sayings, is hungry and humble and live and learn and all those like fun things that you can say to use as motivational tools. But I just wanted to point that out, like the fact that he's been able to, like, it's been something where he starts off with a promising first season and then some struggles, and then he's been able to tweak this program and make it his own.
Oh, and I think it's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because Kalani Sitake, it has not always been easy. And Kalani had a steep learning curve at BYU because, unlike probably some of the most successful coaches in BYU history before him, Bronco Mendenhall, Lavelle Edwards, they had prior coaching experience at BYU. Kalani had to learn on the fly, and there were some difficult times. But BYU football is in such a great place right now because of his vision and his passion for BYU football. And I know last year they signed him to a long-term contract extension, and I don't know if you need to add another extension, but I think that Kalani needs to be paid as one of the highest paid Big 12 coaches, and that's something where we'll never see the dollar amount. But they need to just take care of Kalani in terms of, whatever he needs at this point in this program. I think he deserves it because he's breaking the wall down. Because I think there was a thought of, can Kalani get to the Big 12 championship game? Can he be a coach that's always in the mix? Sure, but can he get over the hump? Well, now he's gotten over the hump. Now the next challenge is to go win the game and take down a Goliath in a Texas Tech, who I believe is a Goliath, one of the best teams in college football, a real national title contender, and BYU's going up against them a second time. But Kalani's done a fantastic job with this program. I'm really curious to see the heights that he can take it going forward this year and the years beyond at BYU. I think he's done a marvelous job. Now, Texas Tech, they've done a marvelous job this year. Joey McGuire, I respect the heck out of Joey McGuire. This guy, he's just one of the great things about this matchup with Texas Tech and BYU, it's two men that love college football. Kalani Sitake and Joey McGuire. And I say that because people love football, sure, but there's a nuance to like loving college football. Like, it's a certain art to it. These guys love this sport so much, and I love that they're duking it out in Arlington to win the Big 12 title. I was looking at this, Kyle. Texas Tech hasn't won an outright title, and again, I was trying to look at the history. An outright title since 1955, the Border Conference. Now, they shared some titles in the Southwest Conference. They've never won the Big 12. So this is huge for Tech. You're talking 70 years since the last outright title. For BYU, last outright title was 2007. There's some, details there. I mean, you went 12 years in independence where you'd had no title to play for. So keep that in mind. But what a huge stage this is going to be for BYU football. I mean, this is the stuff that Cougar fans have been dreaming their whole lives.
Yep. And the fact that whoever wins that game gets an automatic berth to the college football playoff is huge. And I don't know where it ranks in games in BYU history, Mitch, but this is one of the most important and impactful games in BYU history coming up a week from today. And so to be able to just understand that going into it is super cool. But I do think that when you look at it just on the field, BYU is going to be a lot healthier in this matchup, I believe, than they were when they played in Lubbock. You think about L.J. Martin. He was coming off of an injury in a bye week, and I think that he's just looked a lot better over the last couple of weeks. I mean, outstanding game today, outstanding game last week against Cincinnati.
And he said it too. What was it after the TCU game where he's like,
yeah, he got his confidence.
I kind of lacked a little bit of confidence in that shoulder.
Yeah, for sure. And then Bear Bachmeier obviously played his worst game of the season against the Red Raiders. And so to be able to have the defense show up the way that it did, I feel like that wasn't a completely one-sided performance, even though the scoreboard looked it. I thought BYU's defense, for the most part, played well in that game. Could they play better? Absolutely. But the offense and special teams errors were just too much to overcome. The offense was a no-show, and then the special teams was basically a disaster. And so if BYU can make those, I guess, better, I don't know if BYU has to play the perfect game because that's impossible, I think. But to be able to limit the mistakes so that, maybe it's only Will Ferrin misses a field goal and that's the only thing and you're turnover free and everybody else is playing lights out or, something like that where it's not an A-plus performance where you look at it at the end of the day and it was a flawless 60 minutes. I just think that BYU is going to have to play their best game of the season in order to beat this team, and we saw what this team was able to do, Texas Tech that is, in Lubbock. They're going to move up in the rankings this week because of their shutout win over West Virginia, and they're an outstanding team. They might win the national championship, Mitch.
Yeah, they're outstanding, and I think to your point, play complementary football.
Yeah.
What we saw against UCF where you got on one defensive series, Tausilia Kana gets a sack, Jack Kelly gets a sack, forces the grounding penalty, which resulted in a sack, and then Parker Kingston pops off the 55-yarder. Because remember, early in that game in Lubbock, BYU's defense just shut down Baron Morton. What was it, 3 and out? I think there was a sack involved there. I think Cialia Serra got a sack, but then they followed up with a muff punt, and it was not complementary football. Play complementary football. We know you're not going to probably score 30 points. This might be a game where the first 20 wins. And, it could be a game where it's 16-13. And BYU could win that game. I would feel more comfortable if you're at 20. But it might be first to 20 wins. And who can get there first, that's going to determine the victor. And you got to play complementary football, I think, in this game. I think it was also cool, too. Joey McGuire said that both BYU and Texas Tech, regardless of what happens in the Big 12 title, should be in the playoff. And I agree. Obviously, we might be biased because we cover BYU closely, but you watch this BYU football team, the way that they operate, it's not glamorous. It's not a just, oh my gosh, video game numbers offensively. And that's what I've always hated about the viewpoints of teams like BYU. They get treated like, well, you better put up 500 yards per game and be this video game-like offense and just eye-popping numbers defensively to get the benefit of the doubt in the playoff. No, that's not possible anymore with how college football and the talent is spread out in this sport. It's a matter of consistency and playing sound and playing consistent football at a high level every single week because all of these teams that they face, including UCF, full revenue share team with media rights in a power league, a lot of money. These teams are well-resourced, and you're beating them consistently week after week. That has to mean something in a power conference. So, to me, I agree with Joey McGuire. Both of these teams should be in the playoff, but I feel we both agree that, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like BYU's playing for the playoff if they win. If they lose, they're out. And I think that's kind of how it's being set up. Honestly, I get worried about the whole 9-3 Texas thing because I just think that's going to be something that's a building topic. Steve Sarkisian, former Coug, banging the drum for his team, and rightfully so, I get it. But BYU's an excellent football team, and Bear is just getting better. The guy threw for 84%. He completed 84% of his passes, and it was just a very pedestrian day. This is a really good team. But BYU, the one knock on this team, and the committee said it. I asked Hunter Yurachek directly, why is BYU behind the two lost teams? He explicitly said they got dominated against Texas Tech. If you don't get dominated and you lose, but it's close, I'm really intrigued to see what that looks like in the conversation between BYU and Tech and how BYU gets viewed as a playoff team. Then I still am not optimistic, but
I think in that scenario,
that BYU gets
Mitch,
the opportunity.
Yeah, I think in that scenario, it'll be interesting to see what happens in this week's rankings before the championship game because a team like Miami, who's right behind them, thumped Pitt today.
Yeah.
And then you look at, these teams like it seemed, I don't know. maybe I'm wrong in this, but like it seemed like they wanted to rank Utah ahead of BYU for a couple of weeks, and they couldn't. They just couldn't because they wanted the head-to-head.
They love Miami. And look, Miami has all the glitz and glamour. Like, they look the part of a team that could be a national title winner. Like, I had them, I guess, the best team in college football at one stretch. I thought they were incredible. Yeah. But those losses have to matter. And look, BYU's loss has to matter too.
Sure.
And they got thumped. They did. I thought the defense showed up, but really the other areas no-showed. Offense and special teams straight up no-showed in Lubbock. Can't argue that.
But if your ranking is, I am curious because of Tuesday's rankings and what that might mean for the next week, because then it does play into if it's a close loss, how that might affect things. Because if they're just going to be on the outside because of the result in Lubbock, then you have to win in order to get in. There's no other wiggle room there. It's just these other teams where you look at, things like strength of record, strength of schedule, and those 2 lost teams. And it's like you look at some of these things on paper, these A/B tests that people put articles out about, where they're comparing BYU to A&M or Notre Dame or Alabama or these other teams' resumes, and it's like in a blind test with these stats and metrics, it's like BYU comes out on top in most of them.
Well, and to that point too, watching a game like Georgia Tech, Georgia, and I bring that up because Georgia Tech's also been a team that for a long stretch only had 1 loss, but they were just buried in the rankings. Yeah. They had 1 bad loss to NC State, not a great loss. Like BYU's loss is, again, to the 5th-ranked team in the country. But Georgia Tech, I thought they looked every bit the part athletically like Georgia. I mean, they're going blow for blow. I know it's a rivalry game, but again, I just feel like college football is so much closer than we realize. And I hate when I hear, too, I don't really know how good Ohio State is. We haven't really learned much about them. We'll learn today when they play Michigan. And then, of course, they won 27-9. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I know Kyle, his side team is the Michigan Wolverines. I know. No, what is it? No gold pants.
Yeah. They got their gold pants.
I'm sorry. I'm bringing up wounds.
It's
here.
okay. They won the title a couple years ago. I'm okay.
But what I'm getting at is that, like, why does that messaging work for those teams? Like, imagine if undefeated BYU was the 53rd best strength of schedule. They'd be buried in the rankings. They wouldn't be number 1. So it's just
it's SEC and Big Ten bias.
And I hate to point to that, but I feel like it is. And it's just like the Big 12. When you watch this league, yes, it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but it's good football, and it's highly resourced football and good coaching staffs too. Like Scott Frost. He came in with a good game plan, and like he gave BYU everything they could handle for a quarter. And BYU responded, made adjustments, and bounced back. Like, there's got to be respect given to that, and just the respect of navigating a season with only 1 loss. That is so difficult to do. We're seeing teams dropping left and right in this sport. It's tough to go perfect anymore, and I just think BYU deserves the credit too, from also the fact of last year they were excellent too.
Yeah, no, it's true. This program has been building, and they've been spectacular for the last 2 years in a lot of ways, and tripped their foot last year. But this year, if you keep a 1-loss team or 2-loss potentially, if it's conference championship game loss, to be able to have that 13th data point go against you, where you look at a team like TCU gets into the playoff despite losing in the conference championship game a few years ago, and then last year SMU ends up getting in despite losing to Clemson. If BYU is the first one that kind of gets dinged for that, that would be unfortunate, and that's where I want to ask you what your opinion is of what Kalani said after the game, because he was asked about, campaigning for BYU in the playoff and whatnot for the last couple of weeks, and he didn't want to really talk about it because there were games ahead of them, but then they're done with the regular season now. They know that they're in the conference championship game, and he kind of opened up a little bit, I feel like. It wasn't like he was campaigning like some of these other teams like Sark or even McGuire's comments today for Texas Tech, but just the fact that he was talking about some potential expansion even in the playoff, I thought that was a little insightful as well from him.
I am in lockstep with Kalani. I mean, the Big 12 has got to hope for the radical, extreme bracket. That's the 2014 playoff. Because then again, I think to kill the whole, well, this league's always better. The SEC is just always better. To potentially combat that, have equal automatic bids to all the leagues, the power leagues, and let them play it out.
You don't like the hypothetical wins?
I don't. I just, because then it's like, you know what? Okay, we'll settle this in the playoff. And look, there could be some absolute blowouts. It happens. It's tough to beat top 5 teams. Like, you'll probably still end up with the top 4 teams being the final 4 teams at the end. And one of those teams could be a Big 12 team, like this year maybe, on any given year. But I just think that that's got to be the path to really start to kill this whole, like, well, it's the SEC. They're always better. Like, yes, the SEC is really good. I'm not questioning that, but I think that some of the defenses are not. They're still living off, like, the image they had from 2005, that run from 2006 to about 2015 where they were winning every national title until Ohio State wanted to win the playoff. I think that was 2014. They just lived off, like, defensive lines, SEC. That narrative has just sat with the national media for years now, where it's like, no, there's really good defensive lines in other leagues. Like Texas Tech, what BYU's going to see, that is one of the best defensive lines I've ever seen BYU go up against. I'm telling you, like, I've watched BYU football for 30 years. That is one of the best defensive lines I've ever seen BYU go up against. And that's in the Big 12. And David Bailey, speaking of him, he apparently was dealing with a little bit of an injury, precautionary, according to some of the reports from that game. Have to go watch how that played out, but all expected to be available for next week, according to Joey McGuire in Arlington. But there's great talent in college football across the board. I thought Kalani's point was there's a lot of good teams. Like and I like his answer of, like, hey, I don't know everyone's resume inside and out, but I believe in my team and their abilities. So, and that's classic Kalani. He's going to just focus on his own team. But I do think that it would be great to see a 24-team playoff. It's radical. It's extreme. It completely changes the fabric of how we view college football. But I think if we want to just get rid of these inherent biases that come with just, because always we get to this point of the year and it's always, well, the coach in that room, he'll be in there and say, this team, well, it's like you've only played teams in your conference. Like, we need to start to restructure the scheduling, do one ACC game, one Big Ten, one SEC. Let's start doing that. Let's start to really get an understanding of who really is the best league. And you know what? The Big 12 in basketball, despite having less media rights money, they're killing it. The Big 12 basketball is on fire. It's the best league over the last 15 years. And why can't football eventually get to that point if they continue to get invested into these rosters? Like, who's to say that some of these programs, like a BYU, doesn't look at what Texas Tech's doing and saying, you know what? I'm sick of this. We got to go do that ourselves. I'm ready to be the Cody Campbell at BYU. And it wouldn't shock me if there's that guy or woman that wants to be that at BYU. And one day that happens. And who's to say it doesn't happen at TCU and Baylor and so forth? So, like, this can change in a hurry in college football. The thought that, death taxes and this team's always good. Yes, there's the Ohio States. Yes, there's the Oklahomas that are always just pretty much good. I get that. But I think that as talent continues to spread out and young people are like, I'm going to go to this bag. I'm going to go to this situation. This is good for my mental health. This is good for my financial situation. This is good for my family. Like, it's not about the brands anymore. Like, everyone's got a brand. You can get on YouTube. Like, I just think this sport has so much more potential to offer than living off this whole 6-7 selection committee guy. Are you kidding me? I get fired up about this topic, Kyle. Like, I kind of just.
That's why I wanted to ask you the question.
I live in these scenarios in my head, and I just think about it because college football means a lot to so many people. And gosh, like, college football has brought me a ton of happiness in my life, and I just want to see this sport be given opportunities really to everyone. Like, covering and following a program like BYU, it gives me a unique perspective into this sport because I have seen just the real issues of college football by following BYU. For most people that cover the national level and they cover the SEC and the Big Ten, they don't see the side of things that BYU has dealt with for years. Cougar fans have dealt with this for so many times where they're always just viewed as, well, you're not good enough. Bo Diddley Tech. We're picking Texas to the Fiesta Bowl, this and that. Oh, you're not going to the BCS before you even play the game against Hawaii. I could go on and on, Kyle.
Yeah.
But, like, it just, at some point, it's got to change. And hopefully, like, I never thought we'd live in a world where there's a 12-team playoff. So as Kalani said, this is a better situation than the old computers.
Sure.
But it still needs to get better and maybe take the power away from the committee and just have automatic pass and say, you know what? Settle it on the field, and you want to talk about narratives of these conferences, settle it in the playoffs.
Yeah, my last point will be there's something wrong with the playoff structure if an 11-2 Power 4 conference team with only losses are to a top 4 team doesn't get into the playoff, then something needs to be changed.
And that's a great point because Texas A&M lost, so you got to think that
they're
Texas
moving
Tech's
up.
probably going to 4.
Yep.
They're going to have a first-round bye, a top 4 team. And BYU's 2 losses would only be to that team. They should be in. And again, if they lose by 50, maybe there won't be much of an argument. Maybe then you say, okay, they can't compete with the elite teams.
Sure, but still, then at that point, that 13th data point is now impacting a team negatively where it hasn't in the past.
Fair.
So
that's a good point.
If you're going to do that, then you also need to start factoring in head-to-heads more than you have been, because you look at Notre Dame, Miami, then the head-to-head doesn't matter in that situation based off of how they've ranked those teams. So you can't play both sides of everything. That's all my thing is with the College Football Playoff Committee is they're not consistent. They need to be able to have consistency year in and year out, and there needs to be visibility, there needs to be transparency, and there needs to be access for everybody.
This was a great post-game show. I really enjoyed this one. It really wasn't much of a post-game per se. Like we talked to them.
BYU thumped UCF.
Yeah, we talked post-game obviously, but you know, it's Big 12 championship game. That's the big one.
For the Big 12 championship game, my last thing for that will be the game after that, or the week after that. Aaron Roderick was talking about some things that he might have done differently, and he said yes. Like he would have, like there were things in the game plan that after he looked at the film, for sure. But like the way he said it to me, Mitch, was interesting, or not to me, but in the media scrum, he was like, yeah, like there are things, I'm not going to tell you what those things are, but like he knows that there are answers out there that they didn't have ready for the test against Texas Tech the first time around.
And I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt. Sure. Like he will be better equipped. Like
you said, they have to be, right?
Who's to say that this past week, and I don't want to assume, because I think BYU truly respects their opponents, but maybe there were some thoughts about some things maybe you work in to prep for Tech. I mean, maybe that's a little bit too much. I don't know. But, you know, I just think that BYU, great opportunity. I mean, this is the stuff the Cougar fans have been dreaming of. I mean, I remember, you know, just for years, BYU fans have always followed the Big 12, like they've from afar, and they've just always been like, that's the league BYU needs to be in.
Sure.
Well, now you're in that league, and now you're winning at a high level. You're the winningest program since last year in this league, and now you got a chance to win the Big 12. And as Brett Yormark always says about AT&T Stadium, it's aspirational. It's aspirational. Our student athletes that come here, it's aspirational. Well, it's going to be an aspirational moment for Cougar Nation to get a chance to be under the star Dallas Cowboys Stadium. Maybe have another special moment like Max Hull and crew over the Oklahoma Sooners, or whatever they say in Provo, as Brad Nessler said back in the day. I didn't expect that twist and turn in this post-game show. We got to wrap it up here from Provo. I think they're shutting out the lights. They turned out the lights. We are shutting down LaVell Edwards Stadium. We are the last people to leave this stadium, and it's fitting because if this is, in fact, the last home game of the year, it's been a pleasure. It's always fun. This was my 70th home game covering BYU football since I've been on the beat. Love every second of it. Kyle, it's been an absolute blast covering BYU football with you this year, and I think we got hopefully a lot more games to go this season. So that'll do it for this post-game edition of Cougar Tracks, BYU UCF edition. Again, we will be in Arlington for BYU and Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. Looking forward to it. A lot of coverage coming to you next week here from Texas on KSLSports.com, and make sure to subscribe to the Cougar Tracks podcast.